tools that real companies use and that will get you hired. And development also becomes a lot faster because we're using these tools to make us build websites faster and better. So let's talk about React. What do we have before React? Well, as I've mentioned before, we had jQuery. jQuery was, as you remember, very imperative. Writing code was like mixing ingredients sequentially. If this happens, then do this, and then do that. But also if this happens, then do this. And it created a lot of inconsistencies. And if you remember the DOM manipulation section, well, that is really, really difficult. And constantly keeping track of what changed and what to change is a huge mess. And it creates for very slow development. And as your website gets more and more complex, it becomes very, very hard to scale, which means it becomes very hard for teams of developers to manage it. Now, React was created at Facebook. As you know, Facebook is a pretty big app, and a lot of things need to happen for it to work well. And they had this problem, and they created React as a way to solve this issue and be able to have a tool that allows them to build websites in a nice, predictable way that you can have multiple developers working on it at the same time. And I like to use the analogy of a bread machine. Using React is kind of like that. You just throw in the ingredients, and React does all this magic underneath the hood and puts out a website. So it's very reliable and very consistent. And it does one thing really, really well, and that is the view. It manages to make our websites, the DOM, change in predictable ways that is easy to scale and easy to manage. And the beauty of React is that because it's just the view, it doesn't necessarily mean it's only for browsers. As a matter of fact, React can be used with mobile devices to build native apps. It's used in virtual reality apps. You can build desktop apps with React. Anywhere that has a view, well, React can use it. And big companies, as I mentioned before, Facebook and Instagram use React, and Netflix uses React whenever you browse through movie choices. Well, that's using React underneath the hood. It's a very, very useful tool and in very high demand. So I'm excited to talk about React and teach you this valuable skill in this section. Now, in order to understand React, there's a few things that we want to go over. And these are principles that are very valuable that have been learned over the years by developers. One is the idea of thinking in components. Up to this point, we've just built websites. Everything is just one JavaScript file, one CSS file, one HTML file. But wouldn't it be nice if the web was a network of these small components? Think of them as Lego blocks, where everybody builds a specific Lego block, and you just combine these Lego blocks to create your website. That is the idea that React established. Let's use this as an example. You first have atoms, which, as you can see here, are icons and little small indivisible elements on your website, such as images, there's some text, and you divide these into atoms. From there, you form molecules or combine atoms that have similar functionality, such as the navigation bar down here. You combine individual atoms to add some functionality. And then you have organisms, again, a little bit bigger than molecules that combines to a bigger scale functionality. And then finally, you have templates, the combination of these organisms to give you an idea of how your app or website should look. Finally, you have your pages, that is, the page of your app. And if you think in components, as this image demonstrates, well, you're able to build small little components that you can reuse and put on different parts of the webpage. For example, this back button here. If I build a React component that is the back button, I can now use it on multiple pages and I don't have to rewrite the code. If I wanted the navigation bar to be used in different areas of the app, well, again, I don't need to rewrite the code. I write it once and I can reuse it. As a matter of fact, I can even share it with the world. And this idea of components makes React amazing because right here I have a website that has React components built by somebody and we can reuse these. And it's not just CSS and HTML, but real functionality, such as navigation bars and sign-in forms. I can just download this React component and attach it to my website. And because of the way React is structured, it doesn't really need to know about the rest of the webpage. It's just its own Lego block that works by itself. By reducing dependencies on other parts of the website, I can just plug this anywhere I want. Another important concept with React is the idea of one-way data flow. The best way to describe it is by looking at this tree-like structure. In here, you see that we have a parent, some children, and then those children have their own children, and those children have their own children. And the idea with React is that data flows from top to bottom and never the other way around. That is, if these red, let's call them components, change, well, in that case, only their children know about the change. The parents don't really care about the change because, well, the direction of the data flow is just always downstream. So if we go back to the idea of components, if we had a website built on components, and this was the page, and these were organisms, and then molecules, then atoms, well, in that case, the red components change, and then only the ones below it, as you can see here in blue, know of this change. And based on that, they will act accordingly and change as well. Now, without actually having a problem, it's hard to understand this concept, but trust me, this is a very important concept that React brought in. It creates a lot of really nice bug-free code, and it is an idea that you'll understand more and more as we start to code in React. The next thing is the idea of virtual DOM. You know what the DOM is, the document object model. And we also learned that one of the most important things as a developer is to minimize the amount of DOM manipulation that we do because, well, web browsers have to work really, really hard to achieve that. And it reduces the performance of the web page plus increases bugs. I think this image demonstrates what React does really well. Beforehand, we were the painters. We told the DOM exactly what to do. Remove this element, then put this in, and then also add this and color this way. With React, we have this React bot. And the React bot creates something called the virtual DOM. Virtual DOM is just a JavaScript object. And this JavaScript object that just describes our website, the current state of the website. And we just give it that object to React, and the React bot will automatically make changes to the DOM and paint the picture in the most optimum way possible. So we just tell it, hey, this is the object, this is what we want in the DOM, and the React takes care of DOM manipulation for you. Remember how annoying it was to do query select all, then grab elements by ID, and then doing all these event handlers? Well, React takes care of that. So again, the virtual DOM is just a copy of the DOM that's in a JavaScript object, and then React, underneath the hood, just changes the view. And that's why it's able to work outside of browsers, and you can use things like VR and mobile devices because React is the machine, and what the canvas is on, well, we can change the canvas to whatever we want. Finally, React has a great ecosystem. It is probably one of the biggest ecosystems in JavaScript right now, and there's so many tools that work with React. As a matter of fact, the developer community is so big that any problem you have, there's most likely a chance that somebody else has had it and has posted it on the internet and you can find solutions for. You can find React packages in NPM, You can use it with Node. There's Webpack and Babel that you can use with it. It's just a really good ecosystem that uses the latest JavaScript technology to build websites in a really nice, elegant way. Now, one thing that I want to warn you about. In this section, we're going to see code like this. And it's going to look very strange at first. It's like the same way when you looked at JavaScript the first time. It seemed like a whole new different world. It will when you first look at this. But trust me, knowing what you know about JavaScript, this becomes really, really easy. You have classes that extends the React component. And this is how we build components. We have constructor, again, that we've seen in advanced objects. And then each class has a mandatory render function that you just tell it what this clock should render. And as you can see, it looks like HTML, isn't it? It's not exactly HTML, but the syntax is very similar. So even by looking at this, you see that this clock component, again, this logo block, just returns a hello world H1 tag with an H2 that says it is, and then the time. Again, just to give you a heads up, you're going to hear words like props and state and React components, but these are just language syntax that you'll learn. And it's actually quite easy once you get used to it. So don't worry, this is all going to make sense by the end of it. And you know what? We're going to be building a pretty cool app. It's called RoboFriends. And we're going to build this app that, well, searches through your robot friends. And you can find the contact information. And as you can see, it updates live. It's super fast. It's responsive. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to build this pretty fast just to show you how powerful React is. All right. I'm really excited to get into this session. You're going to have a lot of fun. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. a project folder. And we do need to install Welcome back. It's time to build our RoboFriends app. To get started, well, let's open up our terminal. We should be comfortable with it by now. For this section, I really recommend coding along and following along the processes because you will learn a lot better by actually doing this yourself. And like I promised, it's fairly easy and we'll have a beautiful app at the end of it. But for those that enjoy just watching and working afterwards, I will provide the final RoboFriends app files for you at the end of the section. Okay, so we have nothing yet. We're in the desktop. We need to actually create a project folder. And we do need to install React. Now, if you remember in NPM, we could install React and have it as part of our packages in package.json. But there's a tool, again, because React apps are so common, there's a tool that allows us to right away create a React app with all our files already put into place. It's called Create React App. This tool is a global package that you want to install from NPM, and it creates a starter project that contains Webpack, it contains Babel, so we can use the latest JavaScript features, it contains linting and debugging that we haven't really looked at yet. It creates all this infrastructure for you, so right away you can start writing the app. And it's a very good tool that a lot of people use, so we're going to install Create React App. If you remember, we simply do npm install -g, and this will give us Create React App. Again, if you get these errors, always remember to do sudo. Now that we have Create React App, we simply say Create React App, and the name of our app. In our case, we'll call it RoboFriends. You see that? It's installing a bunch of things that we need. Oop, it looks like it's a success. Created RoboFriends at my directory. And it even gives you some good commands. npm start, npm run build, npm test, npm run eject. But we'll get to that later. Let's see what we have in our desktop folder. We have RoboFriends. That's already been created for us. Okay, let's cd into that. And now if I do ls, looks like we have a ton of folders and files, such as package.json, that were already created for us, and node modules. How awesome is that? It already installs React and all the dependencies that we need. As a matter of fact, if we go to the desktop, we see the folder here. So let's drag this to Sublime Text, open it up, and I'm going to change the screens around just so we can see both of these at the same time. Perfect. Now, before I show you what's in the folder, we see that if we go to package.json, we see the dependencies. We have React, we have something called React DOM, and React scripts. And we also have a bunch of scripts that they've already created for us. We have start, build, test, and eject. Let's start off with start because, well, it looks like start reads the React scripts and starts up our server. So I'm going to say npm start. Look at that. We have on our local host a sample React app. So everything's working. We didn't have to do anything except for run just 2 commands, really. Very cool. Okay, let's see what Create React App has created for us. We have a README, which is just information that, if you remember, when we put it on GitHub, this will display in the project folder. We have package.json, which, again, makes sense. I'll explain to you what the dependencies mean in the next video. But we see that scripts were provided for, and all of them use React scripts. Now, React scripts is what makes Create React App so awesome. Instead of us installing things like Webpack and Babel, do you remember how much setup we had to do to get ES6 JavaScript working? And then we also use Browserify to bundle the JavaScript files. Well, React scripts does everything for you, and it uses the latest and greatest that we don't need to worry about any of it. So it allows for people to build really fast apps. And you can use the eject if you end up wanting to customize the React scripts and go on your own. So as your project gets bigger and bigger, you can always eject and customize your app. It is the best way to start a React project. It's managed by the Facebook team, and it is really good. Okay, we also see that there's package lock.json file. And this is a file that automatically is generated by package.json. It makes sure that the version numbers of your dependencies are locked in so that if I give this project to anybody else anywhere around the world, we make sure that the versions are correct so that it works 100% of the time. We also have something called git ignore, and it has a dot in front of it. It's actually called the dot file. And before we run git and push this project on GitHub, well, it checks this file, and if it sees anything in here that it shouldn't include, it automatically says ignore these files. So remember how I said node modules, we don't want to push that to a repo because, well, we have package.json and it creates unnecessary work and weight to push our project. Well, again, we don't care about node modules folder. We don't care about the coverage folder, which again is about testing. We don't need to cover that. And we also don't care about the build folders and a couple of other ones. It just automatically generates this for us. We don't need to touch it. We then have, well, obviously our node modules, and you can see over here, there's a ton of them that, again, Create React App just builds for us automatically. We also have a public folder, and here, everything should be familiar. We have index.html. We have something called manifest.json. It's a new feature that allows people to download a shortcut to your website and have an icon on their desktop. But again, we don't need to worry about it. And then we have favicon.ico, which is the little icon that shows up at the top over here. And you can change that with whatever .ico file you want, and there's online tools to generate these for you. Again, something that we don't need to worry about. And finally, we have the src folder, that is the source folder. This is where all the magic React happens. If you look at index.js, that is the main script file, we're doing a few imports, which you remember, we're just importing different scripts. And we're just simply saying this new syntax that we've never seen before. React DOM, render, app, document, get element by ID. Okay, we know this. So we're grabbing an element of ID root, and we're saying React DOM render, app. If we go to index.html file, we see here, and they have really nice comments that you can read, we see that within the body, there is just one div. This no-script file is in case a browser isn't using JavaScript. Again, we don't need to worry about that. It just comes with default because it's good practice. But in the body, we just have this div with ID root and nothing else. Yet, when we go to our app, we see that, well, there's definitely something there. There's at least text there and at least a logo there. So going back here, without knowing any React, we can say that, okay, we're grabbing this ID root in index.js file, and we're saying we want to render this app component. And this is what we call JSX syntax, which we'll get into later. This app is React's way of saying this is a React component, and I want you to render on the screen in the body this. So I can actually change this to, well, we can say h1, hello, world. Oop, hello, world, h1. And now if I save this, you'll notice that React automatically compiles this for us. So I don't have to refresh, and look at that. On our website, we have hello, world. Very cool. Now, again, another great thing about Create React App, it also gives you warnings. It says app is defined but never used. So if I go over here, yeah, I'm importing app, but I'm never using it. So we also get really, really good advice in our terminal of how we can improve the app. Okay, the final thing I want to show you before we get into the next section, we actually start digging into the code. As you can see, the coloring is kind of off, and that's because Sublime Text doesn't really understand what's going on here. If we change this to Babel JavaScript, there you go. We get the nice syntax, and everything looks fine. Perfect. We have our app set up. I want you to change the tag over here to hello world for now, just to make sure that everything is working. But for now, you have a setup. In the next video, we're going to go through the rest of the files and actually start building our first component. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye. Folder. We have RoboFriends. To Sublime Text, open it up, and I'm going to change the screens around just so we can see. newer version of Create React App that has... Welcome back. I wanted to add a quick video to let you know of a few updates. Create React App that we used in the previous video is now a little bit outdated. And there's something called Create React App 2.0, just a newer version of Create React App that has a few other features that actually won't get in the way too much with what we do in the next couple of videos. And if you want to read about it, you can read about the feature set. They're mostly advanced, so we don't need to worry too much about it. But it's good to know that as libraries evolve, you're going to see changes and differences. And if you are working on a project, it's good to keep an eye out on the libraries that you're using so that you're able to update them, because updates usually mean better performance, better experience with the libraries. So it's always good to keep things updated if they make sense. And most of the times, people that create these are going to try really, really hard to make your experience and transitioning to that upgrade really easy. So let's have a look at Create React App 2.0, and one, show you how it looks, and two, to show you how to upgrade your app in case this happens in the future. First off, when we run Create React App, and we'll call this project New React, it's going to create a package for us. Nothing's changed, just like before. A nice, simple command that does everything for us so we can create our React project. There we go. Now, if we open this in Sublime, or actually, let's clear this and make sure we go into the new folder, so New React. And if I open this in Sublime, everything is pretty much the same. There's a few minor changes that we don't need to worry about. All we want to check is that package.json. We have the new version, which is 2.1.1, the latest version. And if I run npm start here, the only changes that you'll really see is, well, this nicer looking front page. So don't get startled if that's different from the previous video. Like I said, this is just an upgraded version. But let's talk about how this might be useful to you. You see, in this project, we're going to be creating our RoboFriends app. And I actually have the finished version of our RoboFriends right over here. If we look at the files, we see that we have our project in here. But this is an outdated version that we're going to be using throughout the next couple of videos. But let's say you're working at a company and the boss just told you, hey, this new Create React app just got published. It's a lot faster. It's more performant. It uses a lot of the upgraded tools. Can we upgrade it? What do you do? Well, all you need to do is if we open this project up in Sublime Text, we would go to package.json and see over here how our version is 1.0. And we know that the newest version is 2.1.1. Well, all we need to do is just update that and then run npm install. And that's going to read the package.json file and reinstall everything using React scripts with version 2.1.1, which will update everything for us. We now have the latest version of Create React App. And all we need to do to check that it's working is run npm start again. And our RoboFriends app, which we're going to build over the next couple of videos, seems to be still working. Very nice. And by the way, as a side note, you can update React to the newer versions as well if you want. If we go over here, we see that the latest React version is 16.6.1. So we could do the same here and update the library, but that's something that we don't really need to do now. Now, usually when you're working with large projects, this can get pretty tough. When we're updating libraries, we might have breaking changes that, as we update, might break our app. And if our app is really, really big, we might not even notice that these updates to a library is going to affect our app. Maybe we'll discover that bug 4 months from now after we've done the update. And that's something that you really want to be careful of and think about in your career as a developer. It's why package.json files exist, because this way I can copy this package.json file and give it to another developer. And this developer knows exactly what version of libraries and packages they should use in order to make sure that this project runs. It's good to update your libraries, but it's not necessarily always the best way to do things because you might have those rare cases when bugs emerge. And that's something that you'll just have to get used to and adapt as you get more and more experience. All right, let's get started in the next video. Yep, it's me again talking about Create React App because, well, they constantly keep updating Create React App. But we know that, right? Tools are constantly being updated. Now, there's actually a new, easier way of starting a Create React App project. And I'll link to the resource. But Create React App, well, on top of having its own page now, also uses this command to actually create an app. Let's have a look. So in the past, we would do something like create React App and create our own project. But now, instead of us having to install Create React App by using npm install, we can now just do npx. And npx is actually a tool that is a package runner tool that comes with any version of npm 5.2 or higher, which if you're watching the video now, you should have. And because we've talked about how to update our npm. Now, instead of us having to install Create React App now, we can run npx, create React App, and whatever we want to call our app. So if I do, let's say, create React App, and we'll call this project, let's call it Moo, it's a cow's project. If I now run this, all right, there we have it. We have our project so that now I can cd into Moo. And if I open the project, there we go. We have all our files that we're familiar with the latest version of React and React scripts, which again, that is the Create React app. Now, in your case, I want you to create a project that is called RoboFriends, because in the upcoming lessons, we're going to create a RoboFriends app, which is going to be a lot of fun. By the way, if you want to learn more about NPX, I'll link to a nice resource that you can read more about it in this video. All right, that was it. Nice and easy. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Project. But now, instead of us having to install Create React app, but you should have, and because we talked about how to update our npm. Now, instead of us having to install Create React app now, we can run npm. If you want to learn more about npx, I'll link to a nice resource. Welcome back. Now, with the new version of Create React app, there's a few minor changes from what I'm going to show you in the next coming video. If we go to the source folder and we go to index.js, you'll notice that one, this service worker is now automatically unregistered. Now, service worker is something that we don't have to worry about. It's something that allows us to do something called progressive web apps, which I talk about in the part 2 of this course. Now, originally, this was registered automatically, but now it's unregistered so that we technically don't use this service worker until we need to. But we don't need to worry about that. Next, if we look into the app file, you'll notice a big change here. Well, we have the logo as an SVG now, but the big important change is that this is now a function versus a class. Now, originally, before this newest version of Create React app, this used to be a class. Now, don't worry about the difference. We actually covered the topic later on in this section when we talk about class components and functional components. So for now, in order for us to get ready for the next lesson, I want to convert this into how it originally was as a class. So in order to test this, what we'll do is just run npm start to make sure that our project runs. Ooh, look at that. We have a nice little Create React app logo. They love changing the homepage every time there's a big update. All right, so this is running. And all we want to do is update this to originally how it was. It's actually quite simple. And by the way, I'll provide the code for you so you can just copy and paste it after this lesson. So we can just do a class now. So it's class app extends, and we extend from React. So that we say react.component, which is a property on this React that we import. We don't need the parentheses anymore because this is a class. And then finally, instead of returning, we use render here, like this. And this render will return this whole piece. So we can remove this, and in brackets here, just return this part. So if I save here, and now I refresh, everything should still be working. Now, moving forward, we're going to use this setup to learn about React. And don't worry, I know this looks intimidating, but we're going to decipher it and learn React by the end of the section. Let's get started.